Poor girl texts the CEO by mistake, asking for baby formula money. His reply stuns her. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. The apartment was cold. Not unbearably cold, not yet, but cold enough that you could see your breath if you looked hard enough. Anya sat on the edge of the narrow bed, rocking Lena gently. The baby was almost 5 months old and very, very hungry. It was 3 in the morning. Anya was 24 years old. She had once had plans. She had been studying to be a teacher. She had been engaged. She had believed that life was something that happened to you in a linear way, with clear chapters and logical progressions. She had been wrong about most things. The engagement had ended when she got pregnant. Her fiancé had said he wasn't ready. He'd said a lot of things, mostly involving the word yours, as in, that's your problem, and your mistake, and your responsibility. One morning, he simply wasn't there anymore. She came home from her shift at the grocery store and found his key on the kitchen table. Her parents had taken it hard. They were good people, but they were also poor. They lived in the far outer regions of the city, where apartments were cheaper and hope was even more scarce. They had their own problems. She couldn't burden them further. She'd found a studio apartment in the same district. The rent was affordable. The walls were thin. The plumbing worked most days. It was enough. The job at the grocery store had lasted until she was 7 months pregnant. After that, her back couldn't handle the standing. She'd tried other work cleaning offices at night, childcare, anything. But it was never enough. By the time Lena was born, Anya had used up her small savings. The maternity payments from the government were theoretically coming, but bureaucracy moved slowly, and babies didn't wait for bureaucracy. Now the formula was running out. She looked at the can on the shelf. Half empty. 3 days, maybe 4 if she stretched it. But Lena was growing. Lena needed more. Lena was losing weight because there wasn't enough. Anya's own stomach hurt from hunger. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the baby. She'd been putting this off all day, dreading the phone call, dreading the humiliation. But now it was 3 in the morning, and Lena was hungry again, and Anya's fear of the phone call was becoming less important than her fear of her daughter starving. She picked up her phone with shaking hands. She'd written down the number for the social services earlier that day. It was on a crumpled piece of paper from the clinic. She typed it in slowly, carefully, not wanting to make a mistake. She was tired, so tired. She might make a mistake. She made a mistake. She typed the number wrong, 1 digit off. She didn't notice. She typed the message. «Пожалуйста, если можете, помогите. У меня закончилась смесь, ребенок плачет. Please, if you can help. I've run out of formula. My baby is crying». She added a photo of the empty can of formula. She didn't know why. It seemed important that whoever received this message understood it wasn't an abstract request. It was specific. It was real. It was urgent. She hit send. Her hand was shaking. She set the phone down. She picked up Lena and held her close. The baby was warm and heavy and needed things that Anya didn't know how to give her. She waited for a response. No response came. The social services probably had a long queue of people asking for help at night. They probably wouldn't read this until morning. She was so tired. Anya fell asleep sitting up. Lena cradled against her chest, both of them drifting into a sleep that came from desperation rather than peace. 300 kilometers away, in a penthouse apartment on the highest floor of a downtown building, Dmitry Volkov was also awake. He was always awake these days. Sleep required the ability to let your mind rest. Dmitry's mind hadn't rested in 14 months. Not since the accident. Car accident. That's what they called it. a drunk driver in a Mercedes running a red light. Dmitri's wife, Elena, and his 2 children, Masha and Yuri, had been in the other car. The drunk driver had been treated at the hospital and released. Elena, Masha, and Yuri had been pronounced dead at the scene. Dmitri had been working late. He'd been at a dinner with Japanese investors, discussing some expansion that seemed critically important at the time. His driver had wanted to pick up the family himself, but Dmitri had told him no. Elena could drive. Elena was careful. Elena was responsible. Elena was very much alive and making dinner plans for the weekend when Dmitri had last spoken to her at 6 p.m. That was the last time he'd spoken to her. He'd learned about the accident from the police. They'd come to the restaurant. There was a protocol for how they deliver this kind of news. Dmitri had been more struck by their professionalism than by the actual content of what they were saying. His wife was dead. His children were dead. They were very sorry for his loss. He'd continued to sit in the restaurant for another 5 minutes, eating a piece of salmon before he stood up and left. The next 14 months had been a kind of sleepwalking through life. He went to work because the company needed him. He made decisions. He attended meetings. He spoke words. But none of it seemed real. None of it seemed to matter. His therapist had suggested he take time off. His friends had suggested he travel. His business partners had suggested he step back from daily operations. Everyone had suggestions. No one had solutions. The penthouse was too big now. Every room echoed. He'd left everything the way it was the day of the accident. Masha's dolls were still on the shelf in her bedroom. Yuri's soccer equipment was still in the garage. The house was a tomb, and he was the ghost haunting it. He worked at night now. It was easier. The world was asleep. There were no expectations. He could simply exist without having to pretend to be functioning. His phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. A text from an unknown number. A photo of an empty formula can. A message in Russian and English. "Please, if you can help. I've run out of formula. My baby is crying." Dmitri stared at it for a long moment. Spam, probably. Some kind of scam. People did that, sent messages to random numbers, hoping to find someone desperate enough to send money. But the message was so simple, so specific. No elaborate story about a relative stuck in another country. No claim of being a charity. Just a photo of an empty can and a plea from someone who sounded absolutely exhausted. Dmitri thought about Elena. She had wanted a 3rd child. He had said no, he was too busy. The company was expanding. They had enough. She had accepted this with her usual grace. If she'd lived, maybe they would have had another child. Maybe there would be another baby out there that he could have helped. He typed a response. "You've reached the wrong number, but how much does formula cost?" He hit send before he could think about it too much. Before he could talk himself into mind his own business. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then the status changed to read. Then, "Sorry, wrong number. I'm sorry to bother you." Dmitri looked at the message. The woman had seen his response and backed off. She was apologizing. She was withdrawing. She was disappearing. Something in Dmitri rose up in protest. He didn't want her to disappear. He wrote, "Wait! What's the cheapest formula you can get?" Another pause. "About 800 rubles for a good brand." Dmitri opened his banking app. He found the Yandex.Kassa payment system. He didn't think about it. He simply typed in 2,000 rubles and sent it to the number. Then he typed, "Some mistakes happen for a reason." He set his phone down and went back to work. At 3:42 a.m., Anya's phone buzzed. She was still asleep, but the buzz was loud enough to wake her. She picked up her phone and stared at the notification. A payment, 2,000 rubles, from an unknown sender. For a moment, she thought the phone was broken. She was hallucinating. She was so tired that she was imagining things. But it was real. There was a message attached. Some mistakes happen for a reason. Anya sat up. She moved carefully so as not to wake Lena. She walked to the small window of her apartment and looked out at the dark street below. Nothing there. just parked cars and shadows and the faint glow of a streetlight. She wanted to respond, to explain that she couldn't accept money from a stranger, to ask why someone would do this. But she was also thinking about Lena. She was thinking about the formula. She was thinking about the hunger. She typed, "I don't know what to say. Thank you." Then she set the phone down and cried. She cried silently, so as not to wake the baby. She cried because someone she'd never met had shown her kindness. She cried because sometimes kindness was the thing that made you break instead of hold yourself together. She cried because the world was mostly cruel, and then, every once in a while, something like this happened to remind you that it wasn't completely without mercy. By 7 in the morning, she had already purchased formula and bread and milk. The formula came in 2 cans. The good brand, organic, gentle on the stomach. She had enough money left over for a week's worth of groceries. She fed Lena at 7:15. The baby drank hungrily, her eyes closed, her tiny hand reaching up to touch Anya's face. "It's okay," Anya whispered. "It's going to be okay now." She believed it, at least for that moment. At noon, there was a knock on her door. Anya was not expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole and saw a man in his mid-40s, holding a large cardboard box. Behind him stood a woman in a delivery company uniform. "Delivery for Anya Volkova?" the man said when she opened the door. "Yes, but I didn't order anything." "It's paid for," the man said. He set the box down. "Have a good day." The woman from the delivery company handed her a receipt and left. Inside the box was a case of formula. Different brands. Expensive brands. There was also a box of diapers, soft clothes for a baby, a small stuffed bear, and a handwritten note. The note said, "For your daughter, I hope she grows up strong. D." That was all. Just an initial. Anya sat on her bed and held the note and didn't know what to feel. Gratitude, certainly, but also fear. Who was this person? Why were they doing this? Was this some kind of... what? Scam? Con? She'd heard stories about people who looked poor on the internet to get money from rich people then. But she had approached this person. She had made the mistake. This was not a con. This was a person responding to her desperation with kindness. She typed, "Thank you so much. You didn't have to do this. Why are you helping me?" The response came quickly. "Because you asked for help. That's enough reason." She thought about typing back. She thought about asking more questions. But she was also tired, and Lena needed to eat, and she had formula now. She had diapers. She had survived another day. She typed, "I'm very grateful. Thank you for everything." And she left it at that. For 3 days, there was nothing else. She expected nothing else. She'd received help from a stranger. She would be grateful and move forward. That's how things worked. That's how you survived. You took help when it came and didn't ask too many questions. On the 4th day, there was another knock on her door. It was the same man. He was holding a bag from a bakery and wearing a careful, uncertain smile. "Hello," he said. "I'm sorry to appear without warning. My name is Dmitri. I'm the person who sent the formula." Anya's first instinct was fear, but his eyes were kind. Tired, but kind. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here," he continued, "but I wanted to make sure you were okay. That Lena was okay." He knew the baby's name. She had only mentioned it in the photo. "Who are you?" Anya asked. Not hostile, but confused. "I'm nobody important. Just someone who understands what it's like to be desperate. May I come in?" Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. The apartment was small and neat, but the poverty was evident. There wasn't enough furniture. The walls were bare. The kitchen visible from the living area was a single counter and a small stove. Dmitri looked around, and his face changed. She saw something break in him, just for a moment. "This was a mistake," he said. "I shouldn't have come. I'm sorry." But he sat down when she offered him tea. He stayed for an hour. They talked carefully, around the edges of things. He asked about the baby. He asked what she did for work. He listened when she told him about the grocery store job and the hours of looking for something that would provide enough income. When he left, he said, "There's a company, Volkov Industries. They're hiring for administrative positions in this district. I can help you get an interview if you'd like." "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because you're capable, and because you need help. There's no mystery here." He gave her a business card. Not his personal card, just the company card. The interview was scheduled for 2 days later. Anya wore her best clothes, a black skirt, and a modest blouse that Elena, her mother, had sewn for her. She practiced answers to potential questions. She found childcare for Lena from her neighbor, who kept the baby for free because she liked Anya and loved children. The interview went well. Better than well. The hiring manager asked about her experience, and Anya was honest about everything: the pregnancy, the job loss, the time off work, the current gap in employment. Usually, honesty was a liability, but the hiring manager, a kind woman named Svetlana, seemed to see it as a sign of integrity. "When can you start?" Svetlana asked. "Next Monday?" "Perfect. Salary is 35,000 rubles per month. Health insurance included. 2 weeks paid vacation. We also have a small emergency fund for employees in hardship situations. You should talk to HR about that." Anya felt something shift inside her. Not hope, exactly. Hope seemed too fragile a thing, but something like possibility. She didn't see Dmitri on her first day of work. The building was large, thousands of employees. She worked in the administrative department, assisting with scheduling and correspondence. The work was not difficult. The people were kind. There was a cafeteria where she could eat lunch. She felt like she had entered a different world. On her third day, Dmitri appeared at her desk. He was different here, more formal, more distant, but his eyes were still the same. "How are you adjusting?" he asked. "Very well. Thank you for the recommendation." "You're doing good work. Keep it up." He left. They didn't speak again for several weeks. In those weeks, Anya's life changed in small increments. She had a stable income. The hunger stopped. Lena began to grow. Anya was able to move to a slightly larger apartment, one that had heat that actually worked and plumbing that was reliable. She began to think about the future in ways she hadn't since before she got pregnant. Maybe she could go back to school. Maybe she could finish her teaching degree. Maybe her life wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. 2 months into her job, she was in the employee cafeteria during lunch when she saw Dmitri on the television mounted in the corner. There was a news story, a big story, an important story about Volkov Industries and some major philanthropic initiative. CEO Dmitri Volkov announced today that the company will be establishing a foundation to help single mothers in underserved communities. She watched his face on the screen. She watched him speak about poverty and desperation and the importance of giving second chances. She watched the camera pan to a photo of him with a woman and 2 children. His family. The children were young. She must have been recent. She understood then. She understood everything, the sadness in his eyes, the way he'd said he understood desperation, the careful distance he'd maintained at work. She Googled him that evening. The story came up immediately. The car accident, 14 months ago. His wife and children dead. Him the sole survivor of a tragedy that had left him completely alone. She sat at her small dining table and thought about this man who had responded to her desperate text message, who had sent her money in the middle of the night, who had brought her a job when she needed one most, who had lost everything and yet still found it in himself to help a stranger. The next day, she saw him in the hallway. She stopped him. "I know who you are," she said simply. For a moment, he looked like an animal caught in headlights. Then he nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to deceive you." "You didn't. You just helped me." I think you were helping yourself too." They stood in the hallway, people moving around them, and for the first time, they really looked at each other, really saw each other. "Yes," he said finally. I was. The friendship that developed after that was unexpected and quiet. It was not romantic, not yet, not in any obvious way. It was deeper than that. It was two broken people learning to exist in the world again together. Dmitri would invite her to lunch. They would talk about books and life and the terrible randomness of fate. He would ask about Lena's development. She would ask about his day. Sometimes they would sit in comfortable silence. 3 months into their friendship, Anya asked him to come to her apartment for dinner. She had saved enough to buy good ingredients. She cooked a traditional Russian meal borscht and pelmeni and a simple salad. Lena was 5 months old now, sitting in a small high chair that Dmitri had bought her, eating soft food with her tiny hands and making a mess. She had recently discovered how to smile at people, and she smiled at Dmitri with the pure, uncomplicated joy of an infant. He smiled back. It was the first real smile Anya had seen on his face since they met. "She's perfect," he said. "She is," Anya agreed. "Did you ever think," he said, setting down his fork and looking at her, "that one wrong number could change everything? That one mistake could connect two people who needed each other?" "I think about it all the time now," Anya said. "I believe in signs," he said. "I didn't used to. I used to believe that everything was randomness, that fate was just another word for coincidence, and that there was no meaning to anything. But then you texted the wrong number. And I answered. And I sent money to a stranger. And now—" He looked around the small apartment. At Anya, at the baby, at the simple meal they had shared. "Now I believe in signs." Anya reached across the table and took his hand. She didn't say anything. There was nothing that needed to be said. 1 year later, a car pulled up in front of the apartment building where the story had started. Dmitri was driving. Anya sat in the passenger seat, and in the back, Lena was now a robust, happy toddler who babbled constantly. "Why are we here?" Anya asked. Dmitri didn't answer. He simply stepped out of the car and walked to the building. Anya followed him, confused. They climbed the stairs. He knocked on a door on the 3rd floor. It opened after a moment. An elderly woman stood there, confused, looking at this distinguished man and the young woman and child. "I'm sorry to disturb you," Dmitri said. "I'm looking for the family who lived in 4B. Are you familiar with them?" "No, no one lives there now. It was empty for a long time. Why do you ask?" "Just following up on something," Dmitri said. "Thank you." They climbed to the 4th floor and stood outside the door of Anya's old apartment. The door was scarred and old, and through the peephole, Dmitri could see that the apartment was indeed empty. "What are we doing here?" Anya asked. Dmitri turned to face her. "I wanted to remember," he said, "to remember where we started. Not the desperation or the fear, but the moment when two people needed each other and found each other anyway." He pulled a small box from his coat pocket. "Anya," he said, "I know you lost someone. I know I lost my family. I know that the world is unpredictable and cruel and sometimes offers kindness when we least expect it. But I also know that, somehow, through all of that, I found you, and you found me. And now there's Lena, and there's a future that I thought was impossible." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, made of white gold. "Will you marry me?" Anya cried. She cried in the hallway of the old apartment building, holding her daughter, looking at the man who had saved her life by answering a wrong number. "Yes," she said. "Yes." Downstairs, the old building settled into its evening. The lights came on in windows. Families prepared dinner. Children played in the hallway. On the 4th floor, a man and a woman and a small child stood outside an empty apartment, and a ring caught the light from the hallway lamp and glowed golden. Sometimes, Anya thought, fate makes a phone call. Sometimes fate dials the wrong number, just so the right people can find each other. 2 years later, Dmitri stood at the window of their new apartment, a large, light-filled place with room for all of them. Lena, now almost 4 years old, played with blocks on the living room floor. Anya was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. There was a new baby sleeping in a bassinet nearby. His name was Misha. Dmitri thought about the night everything changed. The night when a desperate young woman had made a mistake and sent a message into the void. The night when a grieving man had answered because he couldn't help himself. He thought about how randomly beauty can enter a life, how it can arrive disguised as a wrong number, a text message, a moment of human connection between strangers. Anya came to stand beside him at the window. She wrapped her arm around his waist. "Happy?" she asked. "Completely," he said. They stood together, watching the city wake up below them, watching light spread across the streets, watching the day begin again, the day that would be different from the last only in small ways, but different nonetheless. "Do you know what I think?" Anya said. "What?" "I think sometimes the universe dials the wrong number on purpose. I think it has a sense of humor about it. I think it wanted us to find each other, and it was willing to be a little bit clumsy to make it happen." Dmitri smiled. He pulled her closer. He listened to Lena playing with her blocks, and the sound of his new son sleeping, and the quiet rhythm of a household that had learned to be alive again. "I think you're right," he said. And somewhere in the dark night sky, in a space between stars, maybe something smiled too. Maybe it knew all along. Maybe it had always known. Maybe it was never a mistake at all.